Spotlight this morning, a local entertainer can now add a children's author to his already impressive resume. Here now to talk about his new book, Maddie Loses a Tooth, is our friend, Rhode Island Comedy Hall of Famer, podcast co-host, and like I said, now a children's book author, Ace Aceto. Hello, sir.
Hello. How you doing?
Buddy?
Good.
Two authors in the same show. What is this, amateur hour? No. Come on. Roadshow Book Club is here.
Flashback.
Hello! This video is the making of Maddie Loses Her Tooth. Oh my god, how we can change in a year. I look like Toucan Sam meets Shaggy in a broken down Mystery Machine. Wow, girl. Fix your roof. Anyway, this clip was from the beginning of February of 2022. Explains the hair. When Ace originally reached out to me to be the illustrator of his first ever children's book, which was wild because it's also my first ever time illustrating a children's book as well, which is pretty cool because in the beginning, in the height of COVID, I dropped out of college to pursue my art career. So this kind of felt like getting my diploma in a weird way. And before any more of the video does continue, on that note, I wanted to express my gratitude in a video format to Ace as well for providing me with this opportunity. Throughout this whole process, which I will explain later in the video, it was a huge collaborative experience for both Ace and I was very humbled and honored, honestly, to have Ace trust me with his vision for his book and trust my creativity in the process. As someone who really, you know, art is a part of who they are and how they express themselves, it was really sweet. So yeah, I just felt really excited and really empowered to do the book and to make it my best. And I'm excited for you guys to see what the journey was like. Okay, Slay, here we go.
Sure, my name is Ace Aceto. I have been a stand-up comedian for 33 years and a children's book for less than a year. Just that I've always been of the mindset of life's too short, so go for anything that you want to. If you have a dream of trying something, just try it. I did it with stand-up. I always wanted to do stand-up, and I just got up on stage one time and tried it. And I just, I'm getting to the age now where, I start to see people my age dropping off, and it kind of makes you really reflect on your life, and you think like, I've always wanted this. Well, then do it, because no, tomorrow's never promised, and I know that sounds cliche, but it's really true. So I tell people, go for it. So because it's a children's book, I couldn't make it, joke. It's not a joke book. It's a story. But I did find myself at certain points trying to inject humor in some way. I think it doesn't happen all throughout the book, but there are definitely parts of the book where I think it kind of lends itself to comedy. In particular, when Maddie is talking to the dog, and the dog answers her in a thought bubble, I thought that was kind of bringing a little bit of comedy into it. Well, the process started 6 years ago when part of this story actually happened. But I'm a procrastinator, and I think when I just said, you have to try something, I don't want to live with regrets. I don't want to get to the end of my life and say, I always wanted to do this, I always wanted to do that. So the process took a little bit of a little while, which is interesting because it's a 34-page, children's book with not a lot of words. I think there's just between 500 and 600 words, but I really wanted to do it the right way. So it took a long time. I had an outline for a while. And then last year I was away for a week. I was at Boy Scout camp where I had a lot of free time, and I finally just sat down with my iPad and I said, that's it. I'm working through this. I did some research on children's books and ideal word count and things like that. And so I think the original, it's the same as comedy. Just you want to write something down on paper. I've talked to enough comedy writers and TV show writers and book writers, and they say it's easier to edit than it is to just to write a finished product. So just write as much as you can. And that's what I did. I think the original version had maybe 700 words. And then I said, okay, I really need to, how do I trim the fat? How do I cut this down? And try and get it to that word count that they say is optimal for a children's book. And so I just wrote it, and then I edited it, and then I had 3 or 4 other scout leaders read it as well, and got some feedback just to make sure that I didn't trim too much where it wasn't understandable. And then and then I started, once I had that done, the manuscript done, I started looking for an illustrator. So the inspiration for the story was a true story. It was my daughter Maddie who lost a tooth, and it wasn't her first tooth that she had ever lost. It was one of her front teeth. And I was going through a divorce, and so the kids were at my house that week, and it was my night to be the tooth fairy because she happened to lose the tooth on that day. And she, well, I don't know, she should tell it. She remembers what she did.
I've seen this road 1,000 times. I've got no roots, but my home was never on the ground.
I think the only obstacle that I've run into so far, still kind of early in the process, the only real obstacle was my own procrastination. I just kept saying, yeah, I'm going to write this children's book. I have an outline. And then just never really finding the time to actually do it. That was probably the biggest obstacle. But again, because I had a week where I had free time, I was unplugged, I was camping in the woods, I had a lot of free time to be able to just sit and reflect and think about it. That's really how I overcame it. I wish I could say I had some, wisdom or, inspired reason of why now. I think it's because this is the time that I finished it. I finally got it done. And I think it was interesting because, it's like anything else. You take that one first step into a project or into a new thing, and you start to build momentum. You take the second step, you take the third step, and then as you go, you build momentum and you start getting excited, and then you really want to move forward. And that's kind of how this happened. I had the outline for a couple of years. Then I wrote a manuscript, but before I wanted to really show or move forward with publishing, I did some research on the difference between self-publishing and then trying to be a published author, which is a whole other process, and having to get a literary agent, and then they have to shop it around. And I just looked at it as, for my first time, I think I spoke to 2 local, actually 3 local published authors who did the self-publishing route, and they gave me a lot of insight into it of why you don't have to be on one of the big 8 publishers to see your dream fulfilled. And so that's what I between talking to those authors and then moving forward little by little and then building up that momentum and really getting excited to the point where, you know, I mean, the day I signed the contract with the local self-publishing publisher, I think that's when it really got real, because I signed the contract. It's happening now. We have dates, we have like timelines and deadlines that we're trying to meet, and that's when it got real. So I was going back and forth trying to find illustrators because I had no idea. When I met with Stillwater Publishing, they had recommended some local, you know, illustrators that they used. And my daughter Samantha is very artistic, but she's still developing her skills in drawing. So I felt like I needed to go outside of that. I wanted to give her a chance, but then we both realized that maybe, you know, she still needs to develop a little bit more in that aspect or that part of her art. And so I was talking to my friend Carla, and she said, "What about Jonathan?" And I was like, "Oh, I didn't even think about that, because I hadn't even thought of that, but I had seen Jonathan's artwork. He had done some things for Leukemia and Lymphoma Society when I was running for Man of the Year, and I was very impressed even then." And that was 5, 6, 8 years ago. I mean, he was still. I don't even think he was in high school at the time when I started seeing some of his superhero pictures, and his illustration style I really liked. And so I met with him, and it's I didn't have to get to know him. I already knew him. I've known him since he was probably 10 years old, 11 years old. So it was comfortable. And then once he started giving me mock-ups and storyboards, it just really came together, and I was really impressed. And it helped me see the vision that I had for this book.
Several months later.
All right, this is Ace Aceto. I am just outside of Brood Awakenings coffee shop, where I met with Jonathan Izzard. God, it was months ago. And we kind of went over what I was looking for illustrations on the book. And today is D-Day, or I-Day, Illustration Day. So I am about to head in now and see. I've seen little bits of some of the pages that Jonathan has put together, but I haven't seen everything, and I'm really, really excited to see what he's come up with for the different pages of the book. He had the manuscript, and so he's been going along page by page and illustrating based on kind of some ideas that I gave him, and then others. I wanted his creativity to come out as well, so I didn't give a lot of direction other than what was in the words of the book, like where each thing's took place. And then he had done some storyboarding, and the storyboarding looked pretty good to me. So I'm just excited.
Later.
Yeah, and this is a wonderful book, obviously, not just because you wrote it and you're our friend, but a great opportunity, like you said, for kids really to learn something, and for parents or whomever, aunts, uncles, to share this with someone in their family.
Exactly. And one of the things that at the back of the book, I have one page of cards that Maddie actually wrote. I'm sentimental, so I saved all those cards.
Cute.
So not only do I have a page with Maddie's cards, but then there's a page that kids can cut out their own cards.
Cute.
And ask their own questions to the Tooth Fairy as well.
And they can get their book signed when and where?
So I'm going to do a book signing event at the Park Cafe.
Was heard through the whole house. That's the house. This wasn't the first tooth that Maddie had lost, but it wasn't important. It was one of her two front teeth. Oh, you guys are reading along. Maddie had an idea. She cut some note cards and markers and went into her room. She started writing questions about all of the things she wanted to know. So by the time Maddie went to bed, she had maybe 6 or 8 index cards all written out for the Tooth Fairy. So I'm like, great. Now not only do I have to worry about getting this tooth, but I have to write I have to write answers to these, questions. So she goes to bed. I go in her room at about 11 o'clock. I go to get the tooth, and there are 18 index cards all around her bed. Her bed was against the wall. Not one of these index cards was in an easy-to-get place. They were all on the other side of her, against the wall, held up by stuffed animals. I somehow maneuvered myself to get all these cards. I brought them back in my bedroom, and I laid them out on the bed. And I took a picture of them, and I posted it on Facebook, and I said something to the effect of, when you're going through a divorce and it's your night to be the Tooth Fairy and your kid decides to ask the Tooth Fairy 18 different questions. And, I got a ton of likes and a ton of comments. And one of the comments was, oh my God, that would make such a cute children's book. And that's really what inspired me to think about doing this as a book. Because yes, it was a funny moment for me. It was a funny moment on Facebook, but it was real. And I'm sure my kid isn't the only kid that has questions about the Tooth Fairy. And so it really made me think about how inquisitive Maddie is. And she has a very strong personality. And I love that about her, because as I was writing the book, I started realizing, I'm teaching kids, in particular young girls, how to get answers for themselves, how to be inquisitive. That there's nothing wrong with asking questions and learning things on your own. And if someone can't give you the answer, go out and find the answer. So I really started realizing that the book was about empowerment.